Drew McIntyre was not chosen. He was used. And when that stopped working, he forced WWE to choose him.
What's that metronome I hear? Perhaps the end is drawing near. You never hear the shot that takes you down.
That sentence summarizes WWE in the last 15 years better than any promo package ever could. Because Drew McIntyre's story isn't a rise and fall kind of story. It's a transactional story. Every time WWE needed somebody to step up, Drew McIntyre was their guy, and every time Drew McIntyre had done his job perfectly, he was rewarded by being discarded. Over and over again. And the cruel part is that none of it was accidental. Vince McMahon once stood in a WWE ring and told the audience Drew McIntyre was the chosen one. People remember the line. They forget what it actually was. It wasn't belief, it wasn't patience, and it wasn't long-term booking. It was a label. WWE has always loved labels. Labels are convenient. Labels do the work so the system doesn't have to. Calling Drew McIntyre the chosen one meant only one thing. WWE had to skip past the part where he earns it. And when you do that, the audience never ever forgets.
Chosen one. Who chose you? Who? What was his name?
So Drew was pushed before he was ready, crowned before he was trusted, and then blamed for not living up to a fantasy he didn't create. And then came the three-man band. The three-man band wasn't just a fall from grace. It was pure punishment. It was WWE saying, you didn't become what we told people you were, so now you'll be what we say you are. Comedy, air guitars, a fucking midget, and humiliation dressed up as character development. And then soon after, quite unceremoniously, Drew McIntyre was fired from the company. No goodbyes, no redemption arc, no story about coming back. For most people, it would have been the end. But here's the thing about Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre never complains loudly. He disappears. And when he comes back, he's heavier, sharper, colder. The rebuild doesn't happen under bright lights. It happened in empty halls, small promotions, stiff matches, and silent nights where no one was chanting his name. This version of Drew McIntyre wasn't trying to be chosen. He was trying to be undeniable. Checkmate, Cody. When he returned to NXT in 2018, there was something different about him. There was this quiet aura, this quiet confidence. Like he didn't need to tell you that he was the chosen one. He didn't need to express that he is who he says he is. He just let his work do it for him.
I was the chosen one 15 years ago. Then I got fired.
And WWE noticed, not because they wanted to invest in him, but because they couldn't ignore him without looking stupid. So they brought him back up. And after a few years of tag teaming with Dolph Ziggler on the main roster and going up against The Undertaker for no apparent reason, then came Royal Rumble 2020. Now, when you give a Royal Rumble match to one of your new superstars, that is the coronation ceremony. That is the stamp that says that this is our guy. This is the guy that will lead us into the future, especially when you eliminate Brock Lesnar from that Rumble match. But unfortunately, timing matters more than symbolism. Drew McIntyre eventually became the WWE champion at WrestleMania 36 by beating Brock Lesnar. But it was in the worst era to be a champion. No crowd, no reaction, no feedback loop. The pandemic era stripped wrestling down to its bones, and WWE needed a body to carry the weight. They didn't pick Drew because he was the chosen one or that the fact the management loved him. They picked Drew McIntyre because he was the safe option at that time. He was a big guy, he was sturdy, he was reliable, he was professional, he never complained, never got into any scandals. He wasn't the face of the company at that time. He was the load-bearing wall. And load-bearing walls, they don't get thanked for their service. They just are destructed once their job is finished. And the moment the crowd eventually returned back to the arenas, the title was gone, just like that from Drew McIntyre's grasp. Because the fact is, WWE never believed in Drew McIntyre enough to let him hold the championship and be the face of the company. They just wanted to use him. And as soon as his use was done, he was disappearing. And after a few more years of cruising by, then came Clash at Castle 2022. This one looked like destiny on paper. It was finally supposed to be Drew McIntyre's big moment of winning the big one in front of a crowd. Hometown, red hot crowd. Drew McIntyre against a Roman Reigns that had been champion for almost a year at this point. This one should have been it. But here's the thing about that night. Drew McIntyre wasn't there to win. He was there to lose beautifully. He was there to make Roman look more of a monster. He was there to make the bloodline story continue. That is what the management asked of him, and that is exactly what Drew McIntyre did because he always does what the company asks him to do. The crowd believed, but WWE never did. Then Seth Rollins, another feud that should have elevated Drew back into the main event conversation. Instead, it turned him into a stepping stone. Drew loses not because the story demanded it, but because Seth needed credibility as the World Heavyweight Champion. Then Drew McIntyre finally wins the Elimination Chamber. Finally, is supposed to go on to WrestleMania in front of a live crowd and challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship. But what happens? The World Heavyweight Champion Seth Rollins is invested into another program, another man's story to finish. And Drew McIntyre, while being the #1 contender for the World Heavyweight Championship, just looked like an afterthought in his own story. At WrestleMania 40, Night 2 opener, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, and Drew McIntyre finally wins the big one in front of the crowd. What happens next? 5 minutes later, cash in, screwed by Priest, screwed by Punk, robbed of the title again. See, that wasn't just storytelling drama. That was WWE reminding you what Drew McIntyre's position is in this company. He is the credibility farmer. If the World Heavyweight Champion needs to look strong, beat Drew McIntyre. If a new challenger steps up who wants to be a champion, beat Drew McIntyre. If you want to make the dominant heel look more dominant, beat Drew McIntyre. The man who makes heroes look heroic. Then Damian Priest beats him. Clean, clear. Money in the Bank win finally gives Drew McIntyre some leverage. But what happens next? He cashes in on the same night and screwed again by Priest and screwed again by CM Punk. That was yet another reminder that Drew's credibility always comes at a cost. Another failure, another screw job, and another win that was just conditional. Drew McIntyre then eventually enters into one of the most hottest feuds that I have seen in the last 10-15 years. McIntyre, Punk. And what happens? He loses the feud again. One of the best Hell in a Cell matches I've ever seen. So surely WWE must reward him now. What happens next? Damian Priest again. And what happens after that? Jelly Roll, Logan Paul, celebrity matches. A man of Drew McIntyre's caliber, a man of Drew McIntyre's talent is just used as spectacle seasoning in WWE. Then of course, 2 straight losses to the WWE champion Cody Rhodes, one at WrestlePalooza and the other at Saturday Night's Main Event. And of course, this was WWE doing what WWE does best: extract value without commitment. Drew McIntyre was the guy that you can plug into anywhere. Celebrity matches, high-profile title matches, joke feuds. Drew McIntyre could literally do them all, and a thankless service until something changed. The crowd turned, not in Drew's favor, but against Cody Rhodes. The backlash against Cody Rhodes got so surreal that he was even booed in Europe. And WWE did what it always does when reality corners it. They pivoted. On SmackDown in Berlin, Drew McIntyre beat Cody Rhodes in a 3 stages of Hell match and won the WWE Championship. Not because the story was planned, not because the arc was finally complete, it was because WWE had to pivot. WWE had no choice, and that's the difference between being the chosen one and being inevitable. They reacted to him. They used him when they needed stability. They discarded him when they wanted momentum elsewhere. And in the end, they crowned him because the alternative was worse. And that doesn't make Drew a failure. That makes him dangerous. Because a man who survives being overlooked, underestimated, and just used constantly isn't a chosen one. He's the forcing function. Drew McIntyre didn't fit WWE's plans, so he broke them. And that title win last Friday? It was leverage cashing in. Drew McIntyre was truly the man that WWE never chose.
Never hear the shot that takes you down.